And we are rolling again. Well, hello, everybody. This is Ralph with Temple of the Infinite and Ralph's Stream of Consciousness right here. And going to talk a little bit about seeing the divine in all things. And this is a realization that has taken me several years to actually get my head wrapped around because for the longest time, I was stuck in the illusion of separation, the idea that I am separate from God, that you are separate from God, that all things are separate from God. And in order to find God, if you're so inclined as to being a person who wants to find God, you have to be constantly searching outside of yourself, looking for God in certain books, in certain scriptures, in certain churches, certain uh, spiritual buildings or things like that, mosques, temples, whatever. You're always searching for God outside of yourself. But then you suddenly come to the realization, oftentimes through the practice of meditation, that hey, maybe I don't have to look for God on the outside. Maybe this being, this entity, maybe the divine source has been hiding right under my nose all this time. And sometimes people come to this conclusion early in life. I began coming to this conclusion rather late in life, but I began through the practice of meditation to begin to realize, God is within all things, including myself. God is a very good hider. That was a good Randy Newman song back in the day. I think he's hiding. But yeah, God can be seen as being a very good hider. But once you understand that if you believe in God, once you understand that God is the source of all things, then you have to begin to think of God as any good artist. When an artist creates art, there is always something of the artist in that art. Only Picasso could do a painting of a woman with three breasts. I mean, Picasso was Picasso. You can look at a Picasso painting, and if you're familiar with his work, you can tell right off the bat that ain't Monet. That's Picasso. And you can begin to see the artist in the art. It's the same way with material 3D creation. We can see the creator, we can get to know the source through the creation. And when we come to the understanding that God is not separate, rather, God is a part, an integral part of creation, then we can begin to develop the understanding that, yeah, there is an aspect of the divine within me. There is an aspect of the divine within you, and there is an aspect of the divine in all things. It's getting to be winter. We're close to winter where I am at. Temperatures are starting to plummet. And I kind of like this time of year. Actually, it's kind of early fall right now. But I love this time of year because we begin the process of bringing all of our outdoor tropical plants back indoors. And I like to bring some of my tender bonsai trees from the outside and winter them inside the house. I've got a nice little area set up in the bedroom where I've got a little shrine. I also like to surround that shrine to the divine in with plants. And I this year I'm putting a lot of little bonsai trees around that shrine. But yeah, we bring in our tender bonsai trees, and this is a little elm bonsai. I started this from a cutting about 9 months ago. Put it in water. It got roots. Put it in some nice, good soil. It got to the point where it was viable, and now I'm bringing this indoors to keep it over the winter, to see what will happen to this little tree when I just care for it over the winter time. And in something like this, I mean, it's easy for me to see the divine in this little tree. This little tree is a process of what I like to call co creation. God made it. It started in our garden. It was a garden variety, literally a garden variety elm tree that I took a clipping from. And then I put that clipping into water, rooted it, cared for it. So partially this is God's creation, partially it's my own creation. We're doing a little tag team, God and I, on this little elm tree. And I view it that way in a lot of my bonsai trees. And yeah, it's easy for me to see the divine in that little tree. Here's another one. This is a willow, and it's just now starting to get a few roots. I've got this thing rooting in a glass of water. And later on, about midwinter, hope that that little willow cutting will have enough roots where I'll be able to put it into soil and working with the divine, co create a nice little willow bonsai tree. And yeah, with a little bit of this understanding, with a little bit of discipline, with a whole lot of patience, you can begin to see the divine source in all things. Where the rubber really meets the road is this: anyone can see the divine in a potted plant. Practically anyone can see the divine in a cute little kitten that wants to cuddle up with you. When you're talking about a next door neighbor that is surly, rude, nasty, wanting to shoot your cats with a BB gun, it is very difficult to be able to see the divine source in that son of a biatch. That's where the rubber meets the road. But the truth of the matter is, we are all part of the divine. We are all part of God's plan. We all have our being because our beingness was given to us by the divine source. And that being, I believe, is eternal. And we grow in that being, we live in that being, we begin to develop in that being. And eventually, I believe, we get to the point where we come to understand I am an aspect of God. I have my being through God. God is the source in which we all live and move and have our being. God is the source of all being. And this, it took me a few years to even begin to wrap my head around these statements. When I was a kid growing up in going to high school seminary, I used to joke about philosophies like this. And I had my own version of this philosophy called nothingism. And yeah, I used to have fun, preaching nothingism to a lot of my seminary friends. Then I began to really look deeply at this philosophy, began to understand this is nothing to joke about. You can make jokes about it, yes. Been there, done that myself. But there's a lot of wisdom in this philosophy that God is the source of all being. God is the one, the source in which we live and move and have our being, as is stated in the Gospel of John. And once you begin to meditate on this, contemplate it very deeply, then it gives you a whole new appreciation. And we can begin to understand the world around us in many different ways. God is a part of that bonsai tree. God is a part of all these little clippings that I am now rooting in this little olive glass of water right here. An old olive container now turned into a rooting station. God is in my next door neighbor. God is in the cat. God is in the dog. God is in the BB gun. So why is it that we see so much disharmony in the world? Why is it that one aspect of God wants to do harm, wants to maybe even kill another aspect of God? Well, it's because as children of the divine source, brothers and sisters children of a common God, we are oftentimes subject to a number of illusions, illusions that can cause us harm, illusions that can strike fear into the very soul of the individual, illusions that can really drive us batshit crazy. Just pardon the language there. But yeah, illusions that can just drive us batty. And most people in the world today suffer from the illusion of separation. That is the illusion that they are separate from God. Some people have this to the point where they say there is no God. I only the only things that exist are what I can touch, see, feel, taste, smell. That's all that exists. And by those standards, the atom doesn't exist. You can't see it, can't touch it directly. Try touching a single atom. It's impossible. Can't smell it. I mean, I don't think I can smell it. Have you ever smelled an atom? I can't remember ever doing it. We smell clusters of atoms, groups of atoms, molecules, but a single atom? How do we know that a single atom exists? Well, because some very smart egghead scientists determined that the atom exists and it's taught in schools. And so, yeah, the atom exists. And they've developed some very sensitive electronic equipment that can help detect atoms and sense atoms electronically and on a microscopic scale, or that would even be beyond microscopic, wouldn't it? The subatomic, atomic and subatomic levels. But yeah, we can tell there are atoms, or we suspect that there are atoms, but you can't see them directly. God is kind of like that atom. God is the source behind the atom, the source behind the subatomic particles, the source behind everything, both seen and unseen. And some people are just so firmly rooted in the illusion of separation that they think, okay, if God exists, he, she, it certainly is not a part of me. And depending on how your life has been turning out lately, you may think that the divine really has it in for you. You may think if there is a God, he's got a cruel sense of humor, and I want nothing to do with that sick SOB. But then once we begin to understand that God is as close to us as our jugular vein, to quote Rumi, that God is as near to us as the air that we breathe, that God is literally in the air that we breathe, then we begin to have a whole new appreciation of God. When we view God as being separate, very distant from us, then we think, okay, there are certain things that I can do that God doesn't know about, certain things in my life that God doesn't even care about, certain things that are going on that no way God can care or be aware of, because if God did care, if God was aware, he'd put a stop to all this, right? But when we begin to understand that God is in all things, and we get beyond that illusion of separation, then we begin to understand that we can cultivate a whole new relationship with other people based on this understanding. When you're trying to deal with a surly, ruly next door neighbor that is just acting like a classic mental case, well, maybe that person is a classic mental case. Maybe you need to leave that person alone, but you can begin to also see a divine presence within that mental basket case. Maybe you can see God within that other person. And when you begin to see God in other people, it opens the door to a whole new relationship, to where we move away from fear and hatred to moving into a relationship based upon care, based upon at least curiosity. What is God doing in this form? What happened to this aspect of God that made this person turn out this certain way? How can I more effectively better deal with this person who is a fellow child of God just like me? And it opens the door to a deeper understanding. And maybe that person will reciprocate by beginning to see the divine in you. Maybe not. But at least you can get the process going by coming to the realization that, yes, the divine is in the tree. The divine is within me. The divine is within the stars and the moon, the cats and the dogs, and God is even within some very sick individuals that do some truly sick and disgusting things. But you know what? That is part of what Dante might call the divine comedy. God hanging out in some very unexpected places, having a divine adventure, a divine comedic adventure sometimes, in human form, in animal form, in material form, experiencing reality in a whole new and different way. And once we can begin to have the eyes to be able to see that, then yeah, that opens the door to building new relationships. When I first got started in bonsai, I began to think, I would get easily frustrated. Let's just put it like that. I would take some clippings, I'd put them in water, and you know what? Most of those clippings would not get roots. They would not grow. They would wither and die. And I would think, I don't know what the heck is going on here. Maybe utter a few, choice words, a few God damn it's. And then I began to realize, why am I asking God to damn this? God is within it. If I learn how to better work with the divine source in these cuttings, maybe I'll have better luck in getting them to root. And over the last couple of years, I've learned a few tricks. I learned if you take a few cuttings from a willow tree and you put that with your other cuttings, like this grapefruit cutting, and you put them in the same cup of water, the willow tree, the willow cutting, will add its own rooting hormone to the water. And this rooting hormone will give you a greater chance of success with rooting other trees like grapefruits, rose cuttings, elm cuttings, whatever. And since I learned that trick and started practicing that trick, I've had a lot greater success in rooting these cuttings and co-creating new bonsai trees. And that realization came when I became open to seeing the divine in all things and knowing that, okay, it must be the will of the divine to work in harmony with the rest of creation. So how can I work in harmony with the divine to improve my bonsai growing? And we can apply that same understanding with our personal relationships. How can I work in harmony with the divine to improve my relationships with other people? How can I work in harmony with the divine to design a better life for myself, not just in the afterlife, but I'm right here, right now, right where it counts for the vast majority of people. A lot of people have been told, suffer in this life, and the next life you will have treasures in heaven. And, that kind of cuts the muster for a little bit. And then you get to a certain point where you think, I don't want treasures in heaven. I need to pay the light bill this month. I need those treasures right now. And you come to the realization that, yeah, if the divine is in you, if the divine is in all, you can work more harmoniously with the divine to find solutions to a vast majority of the problems that we have in life. And so In meditation, I've learned this, that yeah, God is not an outside entity. God is within. And going deeper in meditation, I could see, okay, not only is God within me, because I don't want to be a spiritual narcissist. Don't want to think that it's all about me. Some gurus, some teachers do make that mistake. But no, it's not just about me. It's about all of creation. God is equally within me as God is within you, as God is within others, as God is within all of the observable creation and all of the creation that we cannot see. God is there. God is the fluid, the air in which we live and move and have our being. And once we get to that level of understanding, then we can begin to work creatively with it and know that, yeah, I can build a solid relationship with the divine of my understanding, not just in prayer, not just in meditation, but in my day-to-day activities, my day-to-day life. You know, you can carry this to a very deep level. You can pick up whatever book that you happen to be working with, you know, a handy dandy notebook. I love these things. And usually, you know, I pick this up, pick up a pen, start writing stuff down, think this is a great thing to write stuff down on. But then I begin to look at it and I realize God is within the paper. God's within the ink. God is within the pen. God is within this little spiral binding here. God is everywhere. You know, we hear that preached to us in churches, in Sunday schools, in temples, and mosques, but a lot of people don't really understand the depth of that. If God is everywhere, how is that? How can that be? How does that work? And if God is truly everywhere, why can't we sense and feel that being everywhere? And the thing is, it's like Jesus says in a lot of the parables, whoever has the eyes to see and the ears to hear, let them listen, let them see. You have to see these things through spiritual eyes and through spiritual ears. And I developed mine through the practice of meditation. There are other ways that can be done as well. But once you get to the point where you can develop your spiritual eye and your spiritual ears, then yeah, you can begin to come to a deeper understanding of why things happen the way they do and how you can work with the divine in a proactive way to create a better life for you, for your family, for your community, for those around you. A lot of people, we experience this world as a hell zone. And I blame this on the illusion of separation. When you think that you are separate from God, that is one of the classical definitions of hell, is being separate from God. If you are in a place where you believe you are separate from God, that is your own personal hell zone. And a lot of people go nuts in that hell zone. A lot of people go crazy. A lot of very powerful people can go absolutely batshit crazy and do some pretty terrible things. But when we begin to break through that illusion of separation, when we get to the point that we can begin to lead others out of that illusion of separation, providing they want to go, you can't lead someone somewhere where they don't want to be. But once they make up their mind that, okay, I want to leave this hell zone behind, I want to create a heaven on earth, then yeah, you can use this philosophy, you can use this understanding to go from heaven on earth to hell on earth, rather, to heaven on earth. You know, hell, the illusion of separation. It's a place where you feel that you are separate from God. There is no God. You are absolutely cut off. That is the classical definition of hell. Heaven, You are one with God. You are with God all the time. You come to realize nothing can separate you from God, from God's love. God is a part of your very being. God is part of your very essence. Once you learn to see the divine in that up close and personal way, you have found heaven. And, once you change the way you look at things, as Wayne Dyer once said, the things you look at begin to change. And once you begin to change your way of thinking about the world around you, instead of seeing it as a hell zone, seeing it as potentially a heaven on earth, potentially a place where you can see God in all things, in all the cute things, in all the things that suffer, even in all the things that cause the suffering. God is there. They cannot exist apart from God. Nothing can exist apart from God. If God truly is the source of all things, then yeah, God is within all things. And yeah, you can take this thinking to a very deep level. But once you learn to see the divine in everything, in everyone, and that's the challenge. Because yeah, like I said in the beginning, it's easy to see God in a potted plant, easy to see God in a cute little kitten. But when we're talking about some people that might strike us as very unlovable, when you step in a pile of steaming dog poop and you see that on the bottom of your shoe, it's very hard to see the divine presence within that poop. But it's there. It is there. And once you develop the eyes and the ears to see and hear the divine in all things, then yeah, you are well on your way to creating a heaven on earth reality for you and anyone else that cares to tag along with you for the ride and maybe start coming to some of the same conclusions. So that's all for seeing the divine in all things. Yeah, I think God is everywhere. Not because I've been taught it, but because I have begun to see it through my own meditation practice. And yeah, it truly is. It begins to open you up in entirely different ways. A whole new world of possibilities opens up, and a whole new world of potential relationships opens up. When you take the time to stop shooting at things and killing things and start trying to understand things and people and why things work out the way they do, and want to begin to work more harmoniously with the divine plan, with nature, and with one another, a whole new world opens up. And so that's my challenge as we're closing this live stream. Can you see the divine in the good and in the bad? And where do you have problems in seeing the divine? Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, thanks for dropping by. This is Ralph signing out. Catch you in future streams. Take care. Bye-bye.